Our speaker today is Karen Cuttill. Karen is employed as a licensed professional counselor at Dallas College. She provides mental health counseling and crisis intervention for students. She serves on multiple college initiatives as well as on her own campus. Karen's professional interests center on mental well-being and stress management as she helps people through counseling and psych-educational programming. She's a certified compassion fatigue professional, a certified clinical trauma professional, and cognitive behavioral therapist. She is also passionate about environmental and personal sustainability. Her motto, to leave any situation better than when she encounters it. Karen, now to you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. And first, I want to say thank you to all of our vendors' supports. I should have a list of vendors for y'all. I don't have that slide, and my apologies, but I think you can find all of the wonderful vendors back on our webpage. Please try, because they've done a really great job of supporting us, and I just wanted to say thank you to them and let you know that they're out there, and we couldn't do these things without our vendor support. So back to Nature RX Connection. So today I want to talk about how we can respond to stress and crisis in a natural way. The title is Nature RX, Adapting and Thriving After a Crisis, Naturally. We will be focusing on the good health and well-being, number 3, this Sustainable Development Goal number 3. And it is about good health and well-being, which is just really what I enjoy doing the most. By 2030, the goal is to reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from non-communicable diseases through prevention and treatment, and to promote mental health and well-being. The goal number 3, if you took the goal and kind of made it like this, you would have 3 components to it. You would have a physical component, which kind of refers to our physical bodies. You would have a mental component, which is referring, of course, to our moods and our emotions and the way we think about things, all of that cognitive piece, the part of us that kind of makes us in a way. And then the environmental part is it is our environment that we live in, and it is also the environment that we create or that we choose. So we have some control over our environment in some ways. Other ways we have very little or no control over our environment. And we'll talk a little bit about that. First, I want to ask you, since we're talking about how we respond to crisis, and I think crisis is a word that we've all kind of talked about this year because, 2020 has been unlike any other year for all of us, for the whole world. We're in, and I think everyone's been talking about it, right? We have COVID, we're in election year. Things are different this year. We've gone virtual. We've just done things in a different way, and we're learning to do new things. And that's a positive side of this, is that we are learning and we're growing and we're expanding our creativity and our ability to respond to different kinds of situations. But I do want to ask you, so we are talking about crisis mode here, because crisis is a little bit different than just regular stress. How do you define a crisis? Well, for some of us, it might be failing a major exam, maybe the thought of I'm going to lose a scholarship. I can remember those days. They didn't seem that long ago. Sudden change in a relationship. He doesn't love me anymore, or wow, I think he wants someone besides me, or he has somebody besides me. It would be he in my situation. It might be she, her, him, whatever, in another person's situation. For me, it would be he. A loss of transportation. That can be really critical. If you depend on your transportation to get to your work, to get someone to a hospital, to get food. And if you are in a really tight budget and your car breaks down, this can be a real crisis. And for many people, it is a crisis. And for a lot of other people, they've had to learn how to deal without transportation. And in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's really hard to go by bus places or to go by train. So loss of transportation could be a crisis for someone. Of course, job loss, financial struggles. And we're seeing a lot of that since, April, since we started having to close down. We've seen a lot of people lose their jobs either permanently or hopefully just temporary. I'm a believer that everything, if we give it time and we're kind and helpful to each other, our economy is going to naturally come back. There'll be some change that it will require, but if everybody helps everybody out, I think we'll get through this. But again, it doesn't mean that it's not a crisis. And if it's happening to you, it's probably a crisis. A lot of people think those crises are just natural disasters. One of the hurricanes that have come through the Gulf Coast, amazing, more hurricanes ever. I think we are now tied to the amount of ever in one season. So maybe it's the fires out west. Maybe it's an avalanche. Maybe it's a tornado. Maybe it's a flood. There are a lot of natural disasters. I didn't even say earthquake, but there's lots of natural disasters. And yes, sometimes we know they're coming, sometimes we don't. But they're almost always a crisis, even if we prepare for them. A death of a family member. That could be a spouse, a child, a parent, just a loved one, someone really close to the family that we see them as a member. It could also be the pet, because pets are often family members. All of these can be crises, especially if it's unexpected. An unexpected change in health. Luckily, most of us are probably relatively healthy, and we will probably go through COVID being relatively healthy, but not everybody will. And some people will get over it. Most people get over COVID. They get sick for a little while and they get better. That's what happens to most people. But some people don't, and that kind of a crisis situation can really destabilize us. So yes, a change in our health, whether it's COVID or not, could be considered a crisis. Okay, so now I've already said it once or twice or three times, COVID-19. It is a pandemic, and it is in crisis mode around the globe. It's not just us, it's not you, it's just me, it's not Dallas, it's not Texas, it's not the United States, it's the entire globe. The entire world is in the same situation. And I believe it can bring us to unity if we let it. But there's also other epidemics going on besides it. COVID-19 is a pandemic, but there's other epidemics going on, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those that we're experiencing in our country right now. The shutdowns, again, you may lose work. You're, after a while, I've been home for a while. After a while, the walls start kind of, closing in on you, whatever. Some people are home by themselves, and they are isolated. Even if they're with families, they're beginning to feel isolated. A lot of students I work with, that's the number one thing. They say, I'm lonely, I'm isolated, I don't know how to do this. And it is a crisis. We perceive these situations as crisis. Of course, if there's violence against ourselves or violence against others, those things we can look at that. And if we're close to that, we'll view that as a crisis. Social injustice and protests. A lot of us look at that as a crisis. We're seeing more of that happening. It's not the first time it's happened, but we are seeing more of it right now. And that can be a crisis. We may feel like it's a crisis. And of course, the 2020 elections. I think we've all, if you're old enough to vote or if you're there, this could be a crisis situation because it is probably the most important election we have had for presidential election in a very long time. And a lot of us feel like we're at crisis. We're very polarized and we feel like there's a crisis. There is one more crisis that I couldn't get on. You see I'm all balanced there. I've got them, kind of the same number on each side. But there is one more crisis, and I saw this actually happened in person yesterday. And I think you all may have, experienced this some. It is the loss of your cell phone, whether it's misplaced and you don't know where to find it, or if it's been stolen. Most of us feel like it's a crisis. We're like, oh my gosh, where's my phone? If you've ever had one lost or stolen that you've had to replace, you're probably even more anxious and more stressed, and it's even more of a crisis till you find that phone. Anyway, it was just a kind of a way to, hopefully y'all kind of laughed about that, because it is kind of one of those little bitty personal crises. The world's not going to fall apart, I hope, but we may feel like it is. And oftentimes it's the way we feel that we react. So all of those crises are immediate points of stress. But sometimes those happen on top of other things, such as our district, our college, is going in a reorganization, right? And it's been planned. It was planned ahead. We've been working on it, and we were getting up to it. But suddenly COVID happened, and it pushed a lot of that forward. It accelerated it. So now we're not looking just at a reorg, but we're looking at COVID and a reorg. If anything was going on in my family or your family at the beginning of the year, we were looking at that situation along with if we're in Dallas College, if we're an employee or a student, we're being impacted by a corporate or educational reorg. And so, we got that kind of change going on, but maybe it was a change in your life that you were going through at that time, or something you were stressed with at that time. And along came COVID and sat on top of that. And along came everything that came with COVID and sat on top of that. So it's kind of like we're building these stressors up. And what happens to us when we're stressed? Well, we have a physical reaction to that. And that's why we're talking about this, because stress is really unique. We can have positive stress and we can have negative stress. Anyway, with stress for us usually is what we look at something and we perceive it as being a threat. Now, if you've got a lot going on and you're juggling a lot of balls and stuff, and you got a whole bunch of stuff, and you're running late and all these things, the threat there might just be dropping something or forgetting something or not following through on something, or getting something turned in, or getting something finished, or being at the right place at the right time. So that can be kind of little crisis stresses, but it's still stressful. And if that situation will sit on top of anything else. What's really unique about humans, and I'm not sure if it happens with animals, I suspect it does, but I'm a human, so I'm going to talk about what happens to us. We are designed to look at something that is not okay, sum it up, and decide, is this stressful? Is this a danger? Is this going to threaten me? If I got to worry about this? If I'm going along the road and I look down and I see a snake in front of me, I don't really care for snakes, although I've learned over the years that some of them have some very good, they're good for something. They're not good in my pathway when I'm walking. But if I look down and I see a snake and it's all coiled up, I'm going to be going, oh my gosh, what? I'm going to be looking at that snake and thinking, is this threatening to me or is it not? And I've got to prepare myself and decide pretty quickly what I'm going to do. If I'm looking at that snake and I notice that it is making a noise, like a rattle noise here in Texas, I know right there I am in a crisis moment. I have to figure out, should I stay very still and not move and hope it doesn't think I'm going to hurt it? Am I going to try to kill it, remove it from my path? Not me. I'm going to run up the other direction. I'm going to try to figure out how to escape and get out of the situation. But that's the way we're designed. A long time ago when we were in caveman days, and we would go trotting along in our little tribe, and we would come across a saber-toothed tiger. That was really important because we would look at that tiger and we'd say, if I engage this tiger and win, I'm going to bring back food for the entire tribe. I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to be, the member of the day. If I engage the tiger and the tiger wins, I'm going to be lunch. So again, we have to size up the situation. And in order to do that, because we perceive a threat, now that threat today's not a saber-toothed tiger, but maybe it's traffic. Maybe it's a test. Maybe it's something to do with work. All of these stressors, we react to them oftentimes as if they are a saber-toothed tiger, or if it was a worldwide crisis. We have a reaction, a physical reaction to that, so that we can either run like crazy or fight like crazy. So when we perceive a threat, a lot of things happen. Our brain starts saying, oh, threat, I think it's a threat. I'm pretty sure it's a threat. And it starts saying, okay, we're going to get ready. And so what it does, it says, okay, all of your hormones, all of your adrenaline, your cortisol, actually some other hormones too, like epinephrine and norepinephrine, but we're going to talk really about adrenaline and cortisol today. It says, wow, we got to be able to move, and we got to have strength, and we got to have power, we got to do it fast. So it says, give us everything of the adrenaline that we can get. Now, if anything changes at that time and we perceive it to be even worse situation, it's going to give more adrenaline. And it's going to send that adrenaline out, and it's going to tell the heart, you start pumping really, really fast. You pump really fast to get all of that adrenaline. And when we shoot out cortisol, it's going to say you pump even faster to get all of the adrenaline and the cortisol all around the body, so that all parts of the body can react in a stressful manner. We can either run like crazy or we can fight like crazy. And this is good that this does that, because it's meant to be a short-term reaction to something that's perceived as life or death threat. Well, that works really good, again, is if it's something, if that is a life or death threat. But if it's something that we perceive that is chronic, okay, so let's say we have, so the heart's pumping out. When the heart starts pumping out really quickly, then the lungs start breathing really quickly, and we get a little bit more shallow breath. So if you're thinking about if you have test anxiety or if you get really nervous right before you speak in front of people, we often perceive that as a threat, and we'll have the same physical reaction. Maybe we don't have to digest food if we're fixing to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, so our digestion slows. Maybe we get butterflies in our stomach. Maybe our hands get sweaty and our palms get sweaty, or maybe we get cold. Those are because we don't need capillaries. If we're going to fight for our lives, we don't need capillaries. We just need all that blood in the center of our system so that we can protect and we can have all the power we need. So our body reacts to this stress in ways to promote us to be able to run like crazy or fight like crazy. Now, there is one more option. So it's fight, flight, and freeze. So if you have too much hormone response, too much chemical response to the situation, your brain might actually overflow itself, and you'll get into kind of stuck where you can't do it. You can't do anything. That's kind of like what possums do. It's very effective for possums. We're not possums, of course, but it's very effective for possums because they will put themselves in almost a comatose state, and whatever's chasing them will come up. They'll smell. They won't see any movement. They really don't smell very well, and they say, "Wow, this is dead. This is no fun," and they leave them alone. And when the threat is gone, the possum gets up and he walks away. That overwhelm for humans doesn't work so well, but it does work for possums. So the truth is we have stress. And when we get into stressful situations, our brain gives out hormones so that we can survive the stressful situation. We can deal with it and move on. If it's a crisis, if it's something that we deal with and it's over with, it works good. We kind of go back to a homeostasis. And a homeostasis is kind of the way you are every day. You could just picture of it kind of a line. And it's where you are. Most people have good days and bad days, but they kind of stick around the same level of homeostasis, right? They're just kind of where we kind of live at. When something bad happens, let's say our car breaks down, well, we get a stress level and it moves up. And let's say about the same time somebody gets sick in the family, not COVID, just sick, and that kind of moves up. But let's say another thing happens and we're a little bit more stressed. So we're way up here. Homeostasis is way down here. But the car gets fixed, the person gets well, but the other thing really doesn't get worked through yet. But we feel so much better and so much relief that we go, oh. But the truth is we're never back to homeostasis. And eventually this chronic stress, we'll begin to think it's normal. It's not. It's not where we're supposed to be, but we begin to assume it's normal and we begin to operate at this higher stress level. So when something happens, then we get even more chemicals going on in our body than we would normally because we're already at a higher stress level. And so we really have to worry about how do we get ourselves back to that homeostasis, even if we're in a chronic stress state. Chronic stress is those same life-saving responses in your body that can suppress the immune system. It can suppress digestion. It can wreck your sleep. It can cause problems with the reproductive systems, which may cause them to stop working normally. A lot of women see this. Over time, continued strain on your body from routine stress may contribute to serious health problems such as heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and other illnesses, as well as mental disorders like depression and anxiety. The cumulative effect of chronic low-grade stresses can have a greater impact on the health and well-being than an acute or an extreme event that occur at infrequent intervals. Humans are able to manage moderate and high stress levels for a short period of time. We're designed to do so, but chronic stress with little opportunity for recovery, that means it just keeps going, and eventually we feel like there's nothing we can do about it, and it's just the way things are going to go. That kind of chronic stress leads to unhealthy levels of psychological and physiological reaction. So we're kind of talking about how we responding to stress. So that's really important about how we respond to stress. But then you listened really closely, I'm sure, and you heard that sometimes too much stress can actually cause problems in our bodies. And if we remember about our sustainability development goal, it's non-communicable diseases. And so let's talk a little bit about those non-communicable diseases. Now, right now, We've had goals for like 2030, 2035 and beyond. And non-communicable diseases was number 3's really focused. A lot of our focus for health and well-being has been shifted over to COVID because COVID is very important and it's in a pandemic level. And it is also wreaking havoc with people's mental and emotional well-being, as well as their physical well-being and their financial, the environment, the whole thing. But let's go back to where we started from, to non-communicable diseases. Those are diseases that are not like COVID. You're not going to catch them from somebody else. It's diabetes, it's cardiovascular disease, it's cancer, it's chronic respiratory diseases. It's these kind of non-communicable diseases that we want to eliminate. We want to minimize. We want to mitigate the circumstances and minimize them across the world. So I want to talk a little bit about each of them very briefly. Cardiovascular health. This is a myth buster. I want you to think about it. Is it going to be fact or fiction? Heart disease runs in my family, so there's nothing I can do to prevent it. It's going to happen. Mom had it, Dad had it, my grandparents have it, everybody's had it. I'm just doomed for heart. Is that fact or fiction? No, we got these facts of fiction from the American Heart Association. So if you want to know more facts and fictions and myths and things, go to their website. They have a lot of wonderful information about keeping your heart healthy. But the truth is that statement is fiction. Healthy living, including proper diet, exercise, and rest, go a long way to preventing and warding off heart issues, no matter what the family history indicates. So you're not stuck there. You can do something about it, probably prevent it if you work really focused. Fact or fiction. Number 2, I should avoid exercise after having a heart attack. Well, isn't that a given, right? Someone gets home, they've had a massive heart attack. You say, well, sit on the couch. Don't get stressed. Don't move, because everyone's kind of afraid they'll have another heart attack, right? And that might be the one, right? But is that fact or fiction? This is fiction also. Proper exercise and physical rehabilitation is actually recommended and is beneficial in several ways. It strengthens the body, including the heart, and it can help in weight control and keep blood pressure at optimum levels. So don't be surprised if you know someone that has a heart attack, they're going to come home and they're going to an exercise program. It's not like it was 20 or 30 years ago. Things are better now. The next thing we were talking about was cancer. Okay, so there's lots of different kinds of cancer, and cancer is caused by a lot of different things, but it is not communicable. You're not going to get cancer from somebody else. It's going to be something that's going on in your body, and whether, it's all inside you. You're not going to catch it from somebody else. Here's the myth. Cancer is often genetic, and it is, but you can't do anything about it. Well, the fact is, around 40% of all cancer cases can be prevented. There's a lot you can do about yourself, your situation, your health, where you won't get cancer. You can mitigate it if you do. About 80% of cancers are survivable if they're caught early. The last part of this I want to talk about, well, it's not really the last part, but the next part of it when we're talking about physical illnesses are human lungs. Our lungs, our respiratory systems. Now, we all have them, right? We all have lungs, or most of us have 2. One of us might only have 1, but hopefully we all have 2 lungs. And we need to take care of those lungs. Now, they're a little bit harder to take care of. Our heart, it's a muscle. We can exercise. When you exercise your legs, you exercise your heart. When you relax and calm yourself, you help your heart. Now, those things help your lungs also, but there's this breathing thing, and breathing can actually give us some stuff, inside our lungs that might not be so helpful. So the first question I have, pollution. Is pollution the #1 cause of lung cancer after you rule out smoking? So if you're smoking, if you're vaping, go onto that American Cancer Society and learn a little bit about what happens when you smoke or when you vape. It's not so friendly to your lungs. But anyway, is pollution the #1 cause? If you get rid of smoking, is it the #1 cause for lung cancer? Actually, it's not. Radon is. It's radon exposure. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer. Radon is colorless, it's odorless, it's radioactive gas that exists naturally in soil. Now, if you have an if you have a natural gas home, you might know that natural gas that comes from, underneath the ground, we drill for it, we get it out, and then we use it to heat our homes or cook our food or those sorts of things. If you know about natural gas, you know it also is odorless. It is so dangerous that they actually put smells in it so we can smell it if we have a gas leak. All right. But radon, we don't have a way to make us smell radon, or we don't do it. Maybe we could, but we don't usually do that. Probably because we're not bringing it into our homes. It's seeping in through the cracks in our floor or the cracks in our wall, or that sort of thing. It's seeping up from the ground. 1 out of every 15 homes. So if you live in a block, a lot of blocks have 20 houses on that block. If you look at them, especially the older neighborhoods, every 15 homes, 1 out of 15 homes is subject to radon exposure. And it doesn't really matter if you're in a new home or an old home, they all can get radon exposure. And exposure to radon combined with cigarette smoking or vaping seriously increases your lung cancer risk. So the number 2 reason that people get cancer after smoking is actually radon, not pollution. Number 3 is hazardous chemicals. Number 4 is particle pollution. Now I'm going to back up a little bit and I'm going to say pollution. Okay, if you dump all of those things together, the top 3 after smoking, except smoking, you're polluting the air around you or someone else is polluting your air, right? So if you do all those top 4 reasons that people have lung disease, it's all kind of related to pollution, right? It is. If you think about chemical pollution, there's lots of chemicals. If you're cleaning, you're not going to use your Comet or your scrubbing stuff. You're not going to put bleach in there because it's going to create a chemical reaction and it could kill you, right? If you have a lot of particles and pollutions, like if you live close to a manufacturing plant and it's always polluting the air with stuff, well, it's going to be bad. That's particle pollution, right? Sometimes people get evidence or some really long cases or very big cases when it comes to hazardous chemicals. Back in the 60s and 70s, we were involved in a war called Vietnam War. And we weren't doing so well in that war. And so the military decided we had to do something about the vegetation because we were trying to save our troops' lives. And so they decided they had to get rid of all of the vegetation. So they got some stuff, they sprayed it on everything, and it killed the vegetation. But that hazardous chemical also impacted all of those soldiers' lives. And so now almost all of them have type 2 diabetes. And it's directly related to the chemical exposure. And if you want to question that about the Agent Orange exposure, if you want to question that, go look at some of the chemical spills that we have in the United States we've had over the last 20 or 30 years, and you're going to discover in many of them, type 2 diabetes is connected. If someone was involved in that chemical spill, type 2 diabetes is related to that. It's one of the things it's going to happen to people. Particle pollution. We just got to be careful. Lung cancer is not curable. Well, that's a myth. I think I've said 80% for stage 1 disease. So if you're taking good care of yourself and you're noticing the symptoms, go to the American Lung Association and say, what are those symptoms? I need to make sure that I'm seeing them if I have them. So you go and you look at those cure rates. If you get it in stage 1, 80% of lung cancer is curable. That's pretty good. American Lung Association has something called Stand Up for Clean Air. Go check it out. It's really important to all of us who care about sustainability and environmentalism. Every once in a while, you're going to see SDGs, 3, 6, 7, 10, 13 through 15. You're going to see different one of them. That's because this one thing isn't just about number 3. The amazing thing about number 3 is it intertwines with all of the other ones. You look at this and it's not just one here and one there. It's a system. And my goal is to help with number 3. But by helping with number 3, I'm going to be looking at some other things like air pollution, radon pollution, smoking, health care. A lot of things out there. Diabetes, again, 3, 6, 10, 13 through 15. Did you know that the association between air pollution and diabetes is stronger for traffic-associated pollutants? Gaseous nitrous dioxide, tobacco smoke, and particle matter. So pollution just might lead you to type 2 diabetes. Exposure to air pollutants is significantly associated with the increase of type 2 diabetes. The WHO, the World Health Organization, estimates that 50% trusted source of people with diabetes die of cardiovascular disease, such as heart disease and stroke. The American Diabetes Association reports that more than 71% of U.S. adults with diabetes also has hypertension or use medication to treat hypertension. Now, that's really important in COVID, because if you notice that one of the top 4 or 5 high risks are type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, high blood pressure, and lung diseases. Just saying. Think about it. What happens all out here, it can really impact our lives in a crisis situation like COVID-19. The last part I want to talk about diabetes, it's really about any chronic illness. The presence of diabetes doubles the odds of depression. Comorbid depression just means you get depression along with something else. It is serious. From that point, I want to go on to well-being. Because when we get to mental well-being, that mental health part of it, you can't really, just like with diabetes leading to depression, you can't pull that apart. You can't say, oh, this is this and this is that. We're all one human being. And so what happens to one happens to the other. So if you're looking at mental health, mental well-being, we're targeting through that sustainability development goal, we are targeting depression, anxiety, substance use and abuse, and suicide. Depression and anxiety are biological illnesses. We think they're just emotional ones, and we have a lot of stigma against mental health issues. But the truth is when you're depressed, you have a biological reaction that's happening in your body that's making you depressed. If you're really anxious, there's that whole fight or flight or that whole anxiety thing going on. It's making you anxious, right? The truth is, and I'm going to say it very quickly, I believe that you can't have an emotion without a thought first. I'm a cognitive behavioralist. I believe whether you recognize the thought or not, if you have a thought, the thought leads you to an emotional response. The emotional response, generally in our culture, lets us do something or not do something because we base most on our emotions. And then you ruminate over that and it starts to cycle over. So you have a life event, you think about it, you have an emotional response, you do something or you don't do something, then you think about it again and it sets the cycle over. If you change any one of them, you change the whole cycle. But this is a story for another presentation. Substance abuse comes in when you have depression and anxiety. People don't like the way it feels, so they want to change the way they feel. So they stop and they get a drink, or they go and smoke a joint, or they do something else. Well, it works for a little bit of time, but the problem with that cycle, anything that you do to change your emotional, if you're just looking for the emotional feeling, it's temporary. And you have to do it again and again. And then you get substance use that turns into substance abuse. And then we turn into addictions. So all the things are really, really important that we recognize that our mental health is just as important as our physical health, and it works in tandem. It is not separate health. It's really all the same health. And I want to talk a little bit about overcoming depression, because depression can be fatal. A lot of people don't realize it, but depression, anxiety, untreated anxiety often leads to depression, and depression for some people becomes a fatal disease. A fatal illness. Suicide's not about being weak. Suicide is about a chemical imbalance in people's brains that leave them in a point that they feel helpless and they're hopeless, and they don't have really a choice at that point. They do have a choice, but they don't see the choice. Their emotional state is impacted by their physical chemical levels. Overcoming depression, really important for the whole world right now, right? So I want to talk a little bit about nature, because you come to hear about nature and what we can do naturally. So I am not going to ever say you shouldn't take medication, you shouldn't go to the doctor, because I kind of think you ought to, right? There is a place for medication, there's a place for medical care, there is a place for surgery, there is a place for all of that. even in mental health. There is a place and a time and a place for it. However, I want you to pay a lot of attention to this when we talk about meeting crisis and being sustainable after them as ourselves. Duke University Medical School study. Now, it's a medical school. They took 156 patients with major depressive disorder. Now, I already knew these people were depressed, and major depressives mean they're really depressed and for a long period of time, right? It's not the blues a couple of days. These are really depressed people. They took these 156 people, and they actually had a little bit more than that, but the other people, the people that came at that were over that, the extra people, they used them as their control group. Right? So nothing happened to them. They didn't do any of the things that we're doing, like what they're going to do to the test groups, because they're the control group. They want to see what happens to that group if you don't do anything to it. So that's their base. That's their control. Now, in this case, when you're having major depression, you don't want to say, hey, we're going to put everybody over here, make you think you're waiting for a place in line on the next set and not do anything. That wouldn't be ethical. So they gave everybody cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay, so they're helping people through counseling, which actually works, and it's natural. It's what we naturally do. We go to someone, we talk, we want people to listen. It's a natural process, just saying. Okay, Duke University Medical School took 156 patients with major depressive order, and they separated them after the control group into 3 groups. The first group was the psychiatric medication group. That's all they gave them. They gave them whatever, psychiatric medication they were using at the time. A Zoloft or whatever. And you remember, some of these have some major physical symptoms, hazards that go along with them. But psychiatric group, they gave them that. And they anticipated good success. The next group, they said, okay, you're going to get the medication, and we're going to see what this looks like. So we're going to throw some exercise in there. They didn't expect it. They expected maybe a little bit better, but they didn't expect exercise to do much different, because they are a medical school, and they're looking at big pharma. Right? They're looking at pharmacological impact because they're a medical school. Medical schools are changing, by the way. They took the last group and they gave them the psychiatric medication, and the middle group is psychiatric and exercise. The last group, they took the medication part out, and they said, we need another group. We're just going to let them exercise. We're not going to do anything to them except the cognitive behavioral therapy, and we're going to get them to exercise. And they expected that to be a crazy group. Nothing was going to happen to them. They were just exercising. 16 weeks later, that's 4 months later, all groups improved. Seriously, they all groups about the same. They all improved right at 60%. They could see no difference between those groups. Now that really shocked them. So they said, well, all of this stuff helps people. They all got better. So what we want to do is we want to keep people from relapsing. Right? We don't want them to get depressed again. So we say, okay, Duke University said a 10-month follow-up. Okay. Now this is 10 months after the thing stopped, right? They wanted to see, after they did 4 months of treatment, what would happen 10 months later. They got their 156 people in, and they said, oh, look, medication alone, 38% of those people got depressed again. No, that's not bad. That means, that's not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad. Relapse rate with medication, oh, they got excited. 31%, oh, that there's something about exercise that makes a difference, physically moving your body. They almost forgot to check the last group. When they looked at the exercise alone group, the relapse rate was 9%. That is astounding. And they've repeated this multiple times since then. They've done different versions of it. They've repeated it. Exercise alone is the #1 way to fight depression and anxiety. It's totally natural. Just get up and move your body. And that is the first way I want to talk about nature. Let's see if I can get onto the next screen now. Prolonged stress becomes environmental stress. It becomes to the point that once one thing you can't do it, can't deal with it, it gets worse and worse, and it becomes environmental stress, and then it becomes chronic stress, and that becomes a problem. So we want to talk about natural choice, right? So I'm going to run really fast through a handful of slides, and you can always email me or ask some questions in a moment. So in the year 2020, what can we do? Well, we can exercise. We've already talked about the benefits of exercise. So take that walk in nature. So taking a walk in nature, they did a study, Stanford University. They took a bunch of people. They had them walk along an urban 4-lane highway road about a half a mile, and they had them another group walk along a natural oak woodland setting. The people, they gave them before and after tests that tested cognitive ability and their mood. And what they discovered was that the people in the natural path, they had a lot more calmer, they were happier, they actually had a better short-term memory on tests afterwards. So if you got a test coming up, guys, if you've got something you got to do and got to have short-term memory, get out. Do some exercise, get into nature. Environmental stress and de-stress. About 50% of people today live in urban areas, and it won't be long until we're going to see about 70%. On average, people both have lower mental distress and higher well-being if they're living in urban areas with more green space. Okay, we're going to talk about attention overload. Basically, if you're on your cell phone, you're going to miss most of what's going on, and they did that with a study of people walking through arboretums. The public use of green space is important because green space helps us build our immunity. It helps us with our mental health. When your mental health is good, the rest of yourself comes in line. When the rest of yourself isn't so good, then your mental health suffers. So the public use of green spaces is really important. So now we're talking about additional sustainability goals. We're talking about infrastructure, and we're talking about the planning of designs for cities. They found out that the birth rate, weight of babies increases, death rate of newborn babies decrease if the mothers, while they're pregnant, are exposed to green space. That's pretty important. ADHD, it helps with lots and lots of things. It helps people become more creative. Lots of stuff, lots of tests, lots of research. Lots of important people did lots of research. I think I read it all. So ecosystem services are being incorporated into decision-making at all levels of public policy, and they need to keep doing that. Please support that in your area so that you'll have a natural place to go to so you can get natural healthy, right? Plant a tree. Trees are really important. All that air pollution, trees are the largest thing to bring them in and give ourselves more oxygen. Plant a tree. Healthy trees, healthy lives. Check out the website. It has a little thing. You can click on things and it will tell you all about what trees do for you. If you want to know where to find green space, Dallas Parks and Recreations, the Dallas Park system alone, and you can do that, you don't have to live in Dallas, but has the largest municipal park system in the nation, right here at our doorsteps. 397 parks, totaling 20,118 acres of developed and undeveloped parkland. A lot of people don't know that the largest urban hardwood forest is in Dallas, Texas. That's unbelievable, right? The largest urban forest, hardwood forest, in our own backyard. Go and check it out. Discover the Forest will tell you where your closest forest is. It'll also tell you where you can find parks near your house. Texas Parks and Wildlife, well, we pay. Go out and they're all open now, so go enjoy them. National Park Service, depending on what the park is, they're open. Go learn about them. Recreation.gov will give you a lot of places to get out in nature so you can start helping yourself feel better emotionally and physically. There's a list of these. If you want them later, email me and I'll give them the list to you. The Washington University has a whole thing. Finally, remember that kindness is the most important superpower. Random acts of kindness build not only your mental health, your physical health, and someone else's. Kindness reduces stress. If you volunteer, and if you volunteer with somebody you know, so when you volunteer yourself, you're going to get all this dopamine, all this good feeling stuff, because we are social creatures. We are designed to help one another. We are not designed to go it alone. We're designed to be in community. When you go and volunteer with someone you know, or someone you meet and you go back and volunteer again, a crazy thing happens. Oxytocin is given. Your body gives you oxytocin. Oxytocin is what happens in orgasm. It's also what happens when women deliver babies. They get a ton of oxytocin, so they look at the baby and they love the baby and they don't want to kill the baby because it was really hard to have the baby. Self-care is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. And thank you very much. Are there any questions? I may have a couple of moments left.
Karen, we did have one. We have one question that came through, and they actually want to know this. What is your view about people being part of and inseparable from the environment? And then it goes on to say the North American Environmental Education Association argues that nature is not for humans, not a medicine, not an RX, but humans are nature. To disassociate from nature is to dissolve being human. Any thoughts?
I do actually. So when I think about nature, I think about going and walking in trees. You saw a lot of pictures in trees. It's because I really, I love nature. I love the giving outdoors. I like vitamin D from the sun. I like getting it. It does all these things that the research shows happens for me. Nature is a really great place. But I think these things happen because they're meant to happen. We are meant to be in the nature. We are part of the nature. If you think about wildlife, take Africa, right? They have all, if you think about Africa, you're going to think about rhinoceroses and zebras and a giraffe. You think of that as part of Africa. All that nature is Africa, right? Well, there's also people in that. People are animals too. And I think we were created and designed to live in nature and be part of nature. So I kind of agree with that. I think we get benefits from nature, and we should be giving benefits to nature. It should be a give and take. So I do believe that nature is natural. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, we have one more question that came in. We have 1 minute, but it says, working full time, how much time would you say would be good to spend in nature? 30 minutes, 1 hour? What do you say about that?
I say anytime you can carve out of your schedule, spend it in nature. If you get a lunch break, go outside. Look at nature on a screen, whatever you can do. Take an extra walk. Most people, if they work 40 hours a week, they get a lunch break, and they get maybe a break, a coffee break. Coffee's not too bad for you. You want to smoke cigarettes. But take that break, go outside, get up and move. Get up and do something natural, which is like moving. Take it outside if you can. That's what I would say. They say basically 15 minutes twice a day is awesome, but you don't have to do that much. Any bit is better than none of it. Any more questions?
It looks like that is it, and we have 1 minute before we conclude. So any closing thoughts?
If anybody wants any part of this, if you want the site, I have citations for everything I talked about. If you want them, I'll be glad to give them to you. If you want to know where to find this information, be sure to email me at kcuttill@dcccd.edu. Put in the byline nature or nature program summit or something, and I'll be glad to help you. I know a lot more, but there's not any time left.
Thank you so much. That concludes our session.
Thank you, Halanda.
You're so welcome.